Good morning, everybody. This is Jeff with Walk and Talk with Jeff. It is June the 15th, 2026, and it is a beautiful day out here today. It is about 75 degrees, nice sunny day, the breeze is blowing, and thank you for coming on my walk with me today. Today I want to talk a little bit about circuit riders, but before I get to that, I got a couple of current events I want to touch on. The first one is yesterday, it looks like we signed a deal, or maybe not signed the deal, but we have a deal with Iran to stop the fighting and to get that to Hormuz Strait open and get the ships flowing. Let's just all pray that all holds, because it helps everybody for that to get solved. Also, for you hockey fans out there, Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup last night. They have been an excellent team all year long, and I don't know if anyone watched the game last night, but it was a great game for Carolina. Now, if you was a Vegas Knights fan, I'm sorry, but they were just flat last night and looked like they was out of juice. But to get started on the story for the day, I want to talk to you about circuit riders. When I worked in corrections, I was a sergeant in a cell house, and then I also was a sergeant in a segregation unit. Segregation unit is where they put the bad boys that got in trouble there at the prison, got in fights or cursed out an officer, threw something on somebody. It's just the bad boys there in segregation. Well, one day I got this memorandum as the unit sergeant. I was sitting there reading it, and it said that we were going to start getting something called a circuit rider. And I thought, what in the heck is a circuit rider? I had no idea. Well, evidently, people knew who they were throughout the state. It was just that our penitentiary had not discovered the circuit riders yet. But they decided to go ahead and start sending our prison some circuit riders. Come to find out, circuit riders was the worst of the worst. These guys cannot play well with others. They used to, apparently they used to put them in segregation, and that wasn't good enough because segregation really wasn't the adequate punishment for them, because they were repeat offenders there at the prison as far as staff assaults and things like that. So these circuit riders were considered the worst of the worst. Well, we found out that we was getting ready to get 5 of them. Oh, there was all kinds of directives that came down. There had to be a lieutenant there had to be a sergeant there had to be 2 officers, a TAC team assembled, the whole thing before we could even get these guys out of a cell. So right off the bat, we knew these guys was going to be a major pain in the rear. So we finally started getting these circuit riders in, and of course, if you're familiar anything at all with prison transfers, you always get the worst of the worst when they first start sending you transfers. Whether you open up a new prison, whether you're getting circuit riders in new, whatever, you always get the worst of the worst. Well, our first 2 guys came in as circuit riders. Of course, we had the TAC team assembled. We had the Orange Crush. That's our TAC team, was the Orange Crush. They were all assembled, and they was ready to get this guy off the transfer van and get him in and everything. So we had 14 guys out there from one man to get him in the cell. Well, I happened to be the sergeant that night on duty, working in the segregation unit for the first circuit rider. Well, they had commissary that they brought with them. Commissary, they always can get skin products, baby oil, powder, all that kind of stuff, as long as it wasn't, harmful and flammable and all that stuff. Well, we had one guy, we noticed he had 2 or 3 bottles of baby oil. He said in the medical screening when he came in, he told me he had dry skin. Used baby oil after 3 or 4 times a day. Well, he did all right, because what we had to do was we had to get a lieutenant, a tactical unit assembled, just to get an inmate out of the cell if he was a circuit rider. Well, this circuit rider decided he was a big baby oil fan. He used to stand around in his cell, stark naked, covered in baby oil. Strangest thing you ever saw. So we had to get the guy out of the cell to do a shakedown, because we had to shake him down every single day. Circuit riders had to be shook down every day. But the guy was standing there naked, covered in baby oil. So I, as a sergeant, walked up to the door with the lieutenant, told him to turn around, cuff up, put his hands to the chuck hole. It wasn't happening. He said, nope, not doing it. I said, come on, man, come on, back up, get your hands out of here, and let's cuff you up, let's get you. He said, I'm not cuffing. He said, you're gonna have to fight me. Every time you cuff me, you're gonna have to fight me. I thought, oh boy, who wants to fight a guy covered in baby oil? And he's naked. So we got the TAC team was in there, and they popped the door after several orders that he refused to cuff. So the TAC team rolls in there, and I don't know if anybody's ever seen a grease pig contest where people ran around and they tried to catch this pig that was greased up, and you know, they get prizes at the county fair for catching this greased pig. That's the only thing I could think of when the tactical unit rolled in on this guy. They tried to grab, you know, you can't grab nobody that's covered in baby oil. It wound up just having to be a massive poundage of humanity that piled on top of him just to get him handcuffed. Well, the funny part of the story was, after they got him handcuffed, he had so much baby oil on him, they didn't get the cuffs tight enough on the arms, well, they just slipped right off. It was a scene. I've seen a lot of people in segregation and places like that that we went through, that the TAC team had to get them out of the cells. Well, it was usually easy peasy. You know, send 4 or 5 guys in with batons and shields and all that. Simple. Get the guy handcuffed. There was a procedure. But there was nothing in our books that had a procedure to handcuff a guy doused in baby oil. It was impossible. So finally they figured it out. Put the handcuffs on so tight it probably cut the circulation off on his hands for a minute, and had to get him into they had a shower unit there at segregation. Put him in the shower unit while we shook his cell down. Well, obviously the first thing we did was took his baby oil. He was not allowed to have that any longer. However, there's a procedure in the Department of Corrections called a grievance procedure. And anybody who works in corrections knows that most of the time the inmates win grievances when it comes to their rights, as far as especially health care and anything to do with their skin care, anything to do with their, you know, body itself. They usually win those. Well, he won his grievance, got all of his baby oil back. So we repeated this scene every time. The officers who were on the tactical unit finally just gave up and getting new uniforms, new jumpsuits. We had orange jumpsuits, and they just had their jumpsuits hanging up there in the tactical unit, off to the side, just for this one particular inmate. This inmate's his nickname was known as the World, and that's what he used to scream in his cell. He would stand there and look out the window and scream, "I am the world!" Stark naked, covered in baby oil. So that was the first guy we got. He was a peach. The next guy that came in was a guy, he weighed about 300 pounds. Mean. He was one of the meanest inmates I believe I've ever encountered in my life. He told me more than once that he would definitely kill me if he gets a chance. He didn't even know me. Most people, it takes a little while to know me before you want to kill me. But this guy didn't have any idea who I was. And he said that if I get out, I will kill you. And I just want you to know that. I don't want you to be shocked when it happens. And he told me that every time I walked down there past his cell. You know, that stuff never bothered me. It was like water on a duck's back, just rolled right off. Well, and him too, once we had to shake their cell down, once a day, We always had to roll in there with a tactical unit to get him handcuffed and to get him out of there. Now, he was a beast. He was a big, strong man, and they had to fight him every single time just to get him handcuffed, to get him out, just to get his cell shook down. Well, one day, we found out that somebody had, one of the snitches back there, you know, there's snitches everywhere, in the segregation unit said, hey, old boy down there in cell 20 has got matches. Well, I had walked back there a little earlier, and I thought I'd smelt somebody was burning some matches, and I was kind of keeping my eye out to see who that was. Well, we figured out the old boy was telling the truth. I looked in his cell through the window, and I said, hey, I see you got matches? He said, why don't you come in and get them? I said, well, I said, we are going to. I said, but I thought we'd do it the easy way this time. He said, he just smiled at me. He said, no, everything's done the hard way here. He said, no, by the way, I am going to kill you. Oh, this guy's a peach. He's a nice fella. He really is he's a good man. So we get the tactical unit all ready to roll. And we get the guy and got him shook down, took him out. Of course, they had put him in a shower, just like always. Shook the cell down, found the matches, brought him back out. One of the officers said, oh my gosh, he said, I cannot believe that. I said, I think I left my hat in his cell. I said, oh man, I said, surely you didn't leave, you didn't leave your hat in his cell, did you? He said, I think I did, man. About that time, his chuck hole was open because it was really hot that day. Had his chuck hole open. All of a sudden, this officer's hat comes flying out of the chuck hole, flaming on fire. They had missed a match somewhere. I don't know if he had it on him, you know, up in him. These guys can hide stuff that you really can't find, no matter how good you search them. Anyway, this hat comes flying out of the chuck hole, out into the gallery there. It was flaming on fire. The officer said, oh, that's my hat. Yeah, too late now, buddy. But anyway, you know, you got to find humor, you know, in some things. And even though all those situations were all serious, and everybody did their job as a tactical member, and I did my job as you know, just being the supervisor of the unit. There was some funny things that happened. That was just a couple of them, and like I said, they were serious, but yet, you know, in my opinion, they were funny. But you know, correctional people like us, we have a different kind of humor than what a lot of people have. We find things funny because I think that we used humor to try to get us through a lot of the days, you know, of the hard days. But anyway, that's my story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope everyone out there has a terrific day. It's pretty here. I hope it's pretty where you're at. So I will talk to you later, and I'm out.